Coming up in today's newscast, explosions rock an Iranian base in Syria. Paraguay becomes third in line to officially move its embassy to Jerusalem. And the royal wedding may be over, but we have all the juicy details right here. Explosions have just been reported at an Iranian military site in Syria just outside of Damascus. This comes just a few days after another mysterious explosion was reported hitting a Syrian base in the region, a blast that left at least 28 people dead. Speculation is high that Israeli jets may have carried out this morning's attack, but as policy, Israel does not comment on incidents like these. Word is that this morning's attack targeted a base used by Iran to conduct electronic warfare. Typically, Syrian media is quick to assign blame for strikes like this, but has so far offered no details. The nature of the attack, conducted in the early hours of the morning, would be more in line with Israel's typical strike pattern. Israel has been very clear that it will not allow an Iranian entrenchment on its doorstep in Syria. Tensions between Iran and Israel reached a fever pitch earlier this month when President Trump withdrew the United States from the JCPOA-Iran nuclear deal. Tehran launched no less than 20 missiles at Israeli sites in the Golan shortly thereafter, prompting an Israeli counterattack that severely crippled Tehran's forces in the region. Still, others speculate that these explosions, like Friday's attack, could easily have been committed by Syrian rebels. Some Israeli ministers say the current bout of aggression with Iran is over. Others are keeping a close eye on the border. Well, guys, it's official. Paraguay has become the second country to follow the United States' example and move its embassy to Jerusalem. President Horacio Cartes arrived in Israel yesterday to oversee today's ceremony. Prime Minister Netanyahu has hailed this as a great day for Israel, a great day for Paraguay, and a great day for our friendship.
Once again, we are very happy, Excellency. The people say in the history, if 3,000 years ago was the capital, I think that all what we're doing is putting the history on the right place. I want to say too that I like and I really appreciate your warmness, your kindness, and especially your friendship. Paraguay, we feel Israel love you. We love you too. Thank you very much.
Well, this is quite a week for Israel. The last 7 days have seen 3 countries, spearheaded by the United States, relocate their embassies to the Holy City. In most cases, these are merely symbolic gestures, but for Israelis who've always seen Jerusalem as their capital city, it's the realization of something far more valuable. Still, the decision of U.S. President Donald Trump last year to relocate the American embassy to Jerusalem ignited a firestorm of debate. The majority of the world's nations condemned the move, insisting that the fate of Jerusalem should be left between Israel and the Palestinians in peace talks. Trump's decision effectively ended American diplomacy with the Palestinians altogether. Palestinian leadership has demanded that Paraguay, along with the U.S. and Guatemala, all return their embassies to Tel Aviv. But this criticism couldn't dampen the mood for Israelis in Jerusalem this week. Netanyahu and President Cartes are enjoying a festive day of ceremonies for the opening of today's embassy. Paraguay actually had its embassy in Jerusalem until 2012. Now, the two countries have enjoyed flourishing ties in recent years, and today's party is clearly the icing on the cake.
Paraguay helped Jews escape Nazi Germany. We will never forget this. You did this before the Holocaust, during the Holocaust, and after the Holocaust.
Well, protests have surged against Israel, accusing misconduct in the army's handling of the latest Gaza border rallies. The UN's Human Rights Council has just voted for an official investigation into the death of at least 112 Palestinians shot by the IDF during the last 2 months. But meanwhile, in Haifa, hundreds of Israelis have protested against the IDF as well, igniting a new domestic controversy. Owl TV's Brett Allen Smith is here with the story.
Thanks, Natasha. Well, things turned rather violent in Haifa over the weekend. A huge number of protesters took to the streets in solidarity, they say, with the citizens of Gaza. And Israeli police were dispatched to the scene, and fairly quickly, we saw clashes break out. Now, 21 protesters were arrested on Friday night, but it's the arrest of one man in particular. This is a human rights activist named Jafar Farah that sparked a debate here. And Farah claims that an Israeli police officer intentionally broke his leg after he'd already been arrested. And according to his story, he wasn't even part of the protests at all. He says he was only there trying to bring back his son.
Now, this incident has already escalated into one of the biggest local headlines. Israel's police department is now under fire for alleged excessive force.
Right.
Israeli leaders, however, say they were just doing their job. Is there an update yet from the courts here?
Yeah, so it looks like the courts have begun to side somewhat with what the protesters are saying. Now, court documents say that at least 7 other protesters arrested on Friday had to be taken to the hospital after their arrest for immediate medical care. And for that reason, the judge actually just ruled that all the protesters will be released from jail immediately. An investigation into any alleged brutality and possibly criminal charges may soon be on the way.
Now, these protests mirror similar rallies happening all over the world. In Morocco, more than 10,000 demonstrators marched to criticize Israel's handling of the Gaza border clashes. We're seeing something similar in Turkey as well, which is obviously not a surprise. Diplomatic relations with Israel all but broke down last week. Will the United Nations actually vote to investigate the IDF here?
Okay, so here's probably what's going to happen. So the Palestinians will probably be able to summon a vote at the Security Council. Now, if that vote were to pass, then yeah, the UN would send an international team to investigate Israel's conduct during those border clashes. The United States, however, has already promised that they would veto any such vote, which means this will all probably end up at the UN's General Assembly, which, unlike the Security Council, doesn't actually have any legally binding power with its resolutions. And this is, if you remember, the same path, essentially, that things took last year when the UN tried to vote against Trump's decision to move the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem.
Right. Well, Prime Minister Netanyahu has already slammed the United Nations for even suggesting that Israel acted out of line. The army has been pretty clear that these protests were sponsored and organized by Hamas. Many of the casualties from these clashes were, in fact, Hamas operatives. And despite all the outrage, I think Israel feels like the West kind of fell for Hamas's PR game here. But obviously, we're just going to have to wait and see where this goes. Thanks for joining us, Brett. And this brings us into our next interview. In the wake of the March of Return protests along the Gaza border, many Israel advocates are struggling to figure out how to stand up for the country. Well, here with more is Colonel Miri Eisen, a former media advisor to 2 prime ministers with 20 years of experience in the IDF's intelligence community. Thank you for joining us, Miri.
A pleasure.
All right, so first off, how should Israel be representing itself given these protests?
So the first thing is that we have to remember that we do have a heart. I think that the reason that we're getting the hard side is because we're not showing any kind of sympathy. All we're talking about is Hamas. Now, I absolutely am against Hamas. I think that Hamas are definitely organizing. But, Natasha, we're not looking behind the scenes. We're not looking at what the rest of the world is seeing. And the lack of heart is hitting us hard. And I don't think that it's something that's hard to do. All of the spokespeople on behalf of Israel, have you noticed? They're all men. Many of them are in uniform. All of the words, all of the framing that we're using is about the IDF, about the military, about security. But there is another side inside the Gaza Strip, not just Hamas. And I think if we would access that, we could do a lot better.
So can you talk to us a little bit about what that looks like? How do you show the heart? And I mean, obviously, this isn't very simple to kind of change the narrative that we see coming from Israel right now.
So I'm a mother, I'm a colonel, I was in the IDF for over 20 years, and I have no problem saying that I sympathize with the people of the Gaza Strip who are victims. They're victims of Hamas. But in that sense, by realizing that they are victims, I'm separating them from Hamas. Israel does not acknowledge the people in the Gaza Strip at all. All of our PR, and I understand that, but all of our PR has only been against Hamas. And by doing so, people who are looking at the Palestinian people as victims, as we see the pictures here of soldiers, of all of those different things, that's not what the rest of the world is seeing. They're seeing pictures of really, at the end, millions, it's almost 2 million people who don't live in a lovely place and Hamas rule over them. And what they're hearing in the world is that Israel is blaming them for their own situation.
All right, well, do you think the United Nations was right in its criticisms here? Was Israel doing what it needed to do on the border in response to these protests?
So perhaps what we need to do is to separate what's happening on the border from what's happening behind. I like to call it the front stage and the back stage, because essentially in the front seats we have protests. But in the upper tiers, all behind it, and that's what the world is seeing, it isn't just Hamas, it isn't just protests. We don't talk about that at all. We only show the terror acts which are there, but there's other things going behind inside the Gaza Strip. And I do think that that would have made maybe a difference. Let's be honest, in the United Nations, we're not going to win anything, certainly not in the General Assembly, not in the United Nations Human Rights Commission. They're not there to help out with us.
All right, well, Colonel Miri, thank you so much for joining us. And we are just going to have to wait and see if your advice is taken. All right. The FBI has long been in the middle of an investigation into possible collusion by Donald Trump or President Donald Trump's campaign to interfere with the 2016 election. And now it's spread here to Israel. 3 months before the election, several top members of the Team Trump apparently met with an Israeli specialist in social media manipulation. The meeting was allegedly held at Trump Tower in Manhattan and included an emissary for 2 wealthy Arab princes, the former head of Blackwater and Donald Trump's son. The Israeli specialist has been named as Joel Zamel, who allegedly pitched the Trump campaign a multi-million-dollar proposal to help win him the election. This plan reportedly included illegally using thousands of fake social media accounts to promote Trump, employing several former Israeli intelligence officers from the PSY Group company. But these reports may be much more than mere speculation. Apparently, the FBI has already traveled to Tel Aviv to interview witnesses in the affair. Israeli police have apparently already cooperated with the FBI and seized computers from Zamel's office here in Israel. Shocking evidence also suggests that Zamel was paid $2 million after Trump won the presidency, and also visited the White House to meet with former advisors Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. Special counsel Robert Mueller has been investigating Team Trump's possible illegal conduct to win the election for over a year now, with many indictments and subpoenas already on the table. President Trump has lambasted the probe again on Twitter for going global, and Trump maintains that there's no evidence of any collusion. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas has just been sent to the hospital for the 3rd time this week. For years now, many have suspected that the 83-year-old leader's health has been rapidly deteriorating. Conflicting reports say Abbas is now being treated for pneumonia, while others say it's merely an ear infection. Sources seem to agree that he was hospitalized yesterday with a fever, a few days after being in the hospital for ear surgery. It's unclear how serious his current condition is now, though. Some Arab media sources say he was suffering heaving from chest pains and required a ventilator, and others say he was fully conscious and lucid the entire time, suffering only from ear problems. This is the latest in a long string of health problems for the PA president, a man with no clear successor in the event that he were to pass away. Abbas was treated for prostate cancer 10 years ago and underwent emergency heart surgery 2 years ago, following years of heart problems. Palestinian officials are, of course, downplaying any health concerns internally. However, there is undoubtedly the question of who would take over if and when Abbas's time should expire. After 4 terms as president, Abbas has refused to name a next in line. Israeli analysts speculate that if a sudden leadership change were to occur, the power vacuum in the West Bank would likely be a very turbulent one. Most believe the next leaders would likely be far more radical than even Abbas's legacy, likely because of his own unpopularity among his people. Well, earlier this year, Poland passed a controversial law making it illegal to refer to Nazi death camps, including Auschwitz, as Polish death camps. This law has been criticized across the board by Israeli leaders who argue that it dangerously whitewashes Poland's role in a very dark chapter of history. Well, one Israeli soldier in the IDF's reserves just visited Auschwitz on an army trip, and he made his views very known, posing with a handwritten sign that reads, "You too had a part." These words point a finger directly at the Polish government, whose new law criminalizes even the suggestion that Poland was complicit in the Nazis' extermination of Jews during World War II. Well, the soldiers' protests certainly turned heads. Officers at Auschwitz immediately reported it to the museum's authorities. Skirting an international crisis, the IDF has promised Poland that the soldier will face punishment in his home country, as opposed to Poland, where violation of the law carries a maximum of 3 years in jail. The army has officially stated that the soldiers' actions are contrary to the values of the army and contradict the purpose of these army trips to Auschwitz. These words may be mostly to save face, though. Israeli and American leaders have largely condemned Poland's controversial law. Polish officials say it's merely a necessary step towards reducing slander against their country. But leading Holocaust experts at Yad Vashem say it jeopardizes debate and research of the world's most horrific genocide, and minimizes the role some Poles may have indeed played in executing Hitler's final solution. Poland is currently reviewing the new law to judge if it's actually constitutional. Well, it seems like every day we hear about another amazing app designed to help us manage our money. But what about individuals with intellectual disabilities who can't necessarily take advantage of these programs? Joining me now with the application that will meet this need is Noemi Zgav, the designer and developer of Shkalkalim. Thanks for joining us.
Hi.
All right, so tell us about this app. What exactly is it intended for?
Okay, so we developed this app, me and my partner, Abbas, as part of our final project in the BA in Instructional Technologies in HIT. And it meant to help people with intellectual disability to handle money with no difficulties.
So how does it do that?
They put in the money they have in their wallet, and then they can know when they go to the store, they choose a product, and the app tells them if they have enough money or don't. And then it tells them the amount of the setup of bills and coins they should pay with. And after that, they can check if they got the correct change. So they don't need to calculate and do some math that it's really difficult for them.
How did you come up with this idea?
We did some user research based on IBM design thinking method, and we discovered that they really want to be less independent, and especially when it comes to dealing with money.
Yeah.
So we thought it might be amazing to help them do it just like anybody else.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is obviously, it's a simple idea, but I'm wondering if it's working. Is this app already on the market? Can anybody download it?
So you can download it on the app stores, and we just released it lately, a month ago. So we don't know how many of them are using it, but the people we did the testing with, they are using it, and it's really a satisfying experience for them.
Well, yeah, because obviously there's a cause behind this, which kind of makes the process of making an app like this so beautiful. Now, tell us a little bit about IBM HIT and the Children for Children program.
Yes, so it was the beginning of the process when we met with children from Arabs and Jewish, and we did the user research, and they met with the people from Akim with the intellectual disabilities, and we interviewed them, and we understood their needs, and then they came with some ideas for application that will help them and improve their quality of life.
Beautiful. So this is also promoting coexistence as well.
Yeah.
The perfect app. All right. So for those who are interested, you can find the Shkal Kalim. It's on Google Play and the Apple App Store already. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, we have some good news. It looks like the Argentinian national soccer team will still be coming to Israel to play against the Israeli national team. Now, there were lots of rumors that the game was in jeopardy because of security concerns, but have no fear. Star player Lionel Messi will still be gracing the Holy Land with his presence. The friendly match is still set for June 9th, although it may be moved from Jerusalem to Haifa. Either way, the final decision about the location will be announced on Friday. This is a match that has been eagerly anticipated in Israel. After all, the Argentinian national team is ranked 5th in the world. Plus, the match comes just 1 week before the start of the World Cup, meaning Israelis will get a sneak peek of Argentina's moves before the team flies directly from Israel to Russia. Last month, the BDS movement launched a campaign to stop the June 9th match. And most recently, Palestinian soccer player Mohamed Khalil is protesting the game. He claims he was shot by Israeli snipers while taking part in the March of Return protests, and even sent the team a video he said he was filming when he was shot. The team doesn't seem to be budging, however, and Argentinian President Mauricio Macri is even going to be traveling to Israel to attend the game. Well, it's finally happened. Prince Harry has married actress Meghan Markle, or as we should now call her, the Duchess of Sussex. Joining us now with how Israel took part, or actually didn't, is ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh. Emmanuel, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much. All social media platforms were taken over by this event. Everybody was covering it. You know, you couldn't miss it. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. And we were all looking out to see if
the wedding dress.
Yeah, the wedding dress. If Meghan was actually going to be wearing an Israeli designed wedding
Israeli
dress.
designer, wedding dress designer in Bardol did not design. Givenchy did design the wedding gown, and then Stella McCartney designed the reception gown. So it's, you know, we were excited for it, but it didn't happen for her, unfortunately. Everybody had their own comments about the dress itself. But what was most interesting was I recently read an article from Times and so many other news sources, outlets and stuff like that, that this was a historic event. Now, I didn't really understand why in the beginning. When you think about it, you know, obviously there's certain aspects to it, but there's a lot of things that we didn't know. So Meghan Markle, obviously, first of all, is from a mixed race. It was discovered that she wasn't the only one to join the royal family, but it was a really big deal. She's also Catholic. She is a famous actress, and she's from the United States, and she's divorced. So it's something that's never been brought into the royal family before. It's not the traditional bride that you see one of the princes marrying. Of course, other aspects were the wedding cake itself. Usually they go on to, like, they usually have a certain wedding cake that they have in the event. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle decided to have a lemon fruit cake. A lemon cake decorated with fresh flowers. I think that they're a couple that really, this is beautiful. I think that they're a couple that really was going out of their way to be very different in all different aspects. They invited a lot of the public to come join the event, a lot of celebrities, because Meghan Markle, after all, is one of the stars of a leading TV show called Suits from the States, yes. So there was an array of different celebrities, George Clooney, the Beckhams, Victoria and David. So many celebrities came out.
Well, I mean, this is obviously a huge affair because it is the royal family.
Right.
And Prince Harry, I think the entire royal family was waiting a very long time for him to get married. He's 33.
Yes. He had a lot of long-term relationships before. He was dating someone for 7 years before he met Meghan. And so I think he says that he absolutely knew she was the one from day one when he fell in love with her so quickly.
Well, he apparently had a crush on her beforehand,
right.
too.
And they were set up, not so set up. You know, I think that he was really in love with her and very excited about the wedding. But they did have a whole aspect of making sure that it was more of a family affair as opposed to a royal event. So they did invite a lot of the public. What was really interesting and unfortunate was that Meghan's father couldn't make it because of health reasons. So Prince Charles did say that he would walk her down the aisle, but then it was later discovered that she would walk most of the aisle down by herself, which was what people are saying is a huge feminist statement on her part and a complete untraditional aspect of the royal family weddings. So I think that was a really cool twist to it, that she was doing a lot of things, a lot of statement things in this event.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, this is Meghan Markle, actress who's now the Duchess of Sussex. Her life is changing completely. She's going to actually continue, she's retired from acting. Right. She's going to continue living in the UK, performing her royal duties. And it's going to be interesting to see if she makes it over here to Israel to visit.
I would like to think so.
I mean, we have had some royals come and visit here, and it will certainly be exciting. I
could definitely say, as a fan of Suits and as a fan of her, as an actress and a person, I would be more than happy for her to come visit Israel.
Absolutely. Maybe this time she can pick up a dress from in Baldur, one of the designers at least. It's too bad those sketches got out in advance.
I know.
But, you know, she still looked beautiful, right?
She did. She looked beautiful.
All right, Emmanuel, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
It will be exciting to see what happens next with this couple. All right, the future is here. 8 million partially automated cars will be hitting the streets in 2021, and it's all thanks to the Israeli company Mobileye. That's right, the Jerusalem-based Intel subsidiary has struck a deal to supply its IQ5 chips for integration in 8 million vehicles. It's not yet clear which automaker will be manufacturing the cars, but allegedly it's a European company. Even though these futuristic cars are only going to be partially automatic, it's still a huge step towards fully self-driving vehicles. Partial automation means drivers still have to remain alert to road conditions. The Israeli company Mobileye is a world leader in advanced driver assistance tech and dominates about 70% of the current market. The company was actually acquired by Intel back in March of 2017 for a whopping $15.3 billion. Mobileye says that by the end of 2019, the company expects to have over 100,000 Level 3 cars that will be able to drive by themselves completely. If the system fails, drivers will have 10 seconds to take over. The cars will also be equipped with at least 12 cameras for 360-degree visibility. That should certainly help me navigate some of Tel Aviv's tiny streets.
The Hebrew word of the day is brought to you by IDC Summer Ulpan, open to everyone.
And now for our Hebrew word of the day. Between cars that drive us and another royal wedding, there are plenty of reasons to feel pretty regal. So today's word is malchuti, meaning royal. The root here is, of course, melech and malka, meaning king and queen, but you don't have to be born into a mishpacha malchutit or a royal family to be treated like royalty. Just remember to live by the golden rule and maybe buy a bunch of clothing in kahol malchuti or royal blue. That usually gives it away. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be mostly clear and warm with a low of 73 or 23 degrees Celsius. Then tomorrow will be partly cloudy and with a slight rise in temperatures to a high of around 96 or 36 degrees Celsius. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.6 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook at Israel English News and on Twitter at ILTV News. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.